Hello everyone. In this video, we will discuss how to calculate portfolio risk and return. First of all is portfolio risk. To calculate portfolio risk of two stocks, we need to sum up these four boxes. Let's say we have two stocks, stock 1 and stock 2. The first component is weight square of asset 1 and variance of asset 1. You know, the weight means the proportion of your investment in asset 1. The fourth component is weight of asset 2 and variance of asset 2. And the third one is weight of asset 1, weight of asset 2, standard deviation of asset 1, standard deviation of asset 2, and correlation between asset 1 and asset 2. And you have the same component here. Now, if we summarize these four components, we get the formula for portfolio variance. So you can see this is the weight square and variance square of asset 1, weight square and variance of asset 2, and 2 into weight 1, weight 2, standard deviation 1, standard deviation 2, and correlation between asset 1 and 2. Now we need to understand one important concept here. With regard to portfolio return, I told you in the last video that portfolio return is the weighted average return of individual assets. For example, when you have two assets, portfolio return is weight of asset 1, return of asset 2, plus weight of asset 2, weight of asset 1 and return of asset 1, weight of asset 2 and return of asset 2. So we multiply these two and we sum them up. So it's simply the weighted average return of asset 1 and asset 2. However, as far as the portfolio risk is concerned, then it's not the portfolio variance means that weighted average variance of asset 1 and asset 2. It's not that, because if the portfolio variance is the weighted average variance of individual asset, then it should be this part, and this part excluding this component, right? So it should be a square plus b square plus 2. You can see this part is a and this part is b. It should be this. However, we have one additional component, which is correlation. So what does it actually mean that it's not the weighted average? The meaning is this correlation will affect your portfolio variance. Now, what's a correlation? Correlation means how two asset return varies, okay? And it lies between -1 to +1. I think all of you know that. Okay, if the correlation between two assets is +1, it means that two assets returns are perfectly positively correlated. And if asset returns correlation is -1, it means that they are perfectly negatively correlated. Now look at one thing. And correlation can also be 0. Now look at this here. If this correlation is 0, for example, if this correlation is 0, what happens? This entire part becomes 0, right? So in that case, the portfolio variance will be less than the weighted average of the individual variance. Why? Because it becomes 0. Now, if it is not 0, for any portfolio assets correlation which is less than +1, anything less than +1, then this part will be lower, right? Because you can see that if this is +1, for example, if this is +1, this correlation, then this part is simply 2AB. So you do not get any diversification benefit. So if two stocks are perfectly positively correlated, in that case, you do not get any diversification benefit because portfolio variance will be the weighted average variance of individual asset. However, for any portfolio, you see, for any portfolio where this correlation is less than 1, then this part will be less than what you would have. right? For example, if it is 0.1, if it is 0.2, if it is 0.3, if it is 0.9, for anything, if it is minus 0.1, minus 0.2, anything less than 1, this part will decline. Since this part declines, your portfolio variance will be less than the weighted average variance of individual assets. So what is the implication? Implication is portfolio return is the weighted average of individual return. However, as you combine stocks in a portfolio, portfolio variance is less than the individual variance, except if two stocks are perfectly positively correlated. That means you are getting the weighted average return. However, the risk is less than the weighted average risk. Do you understand my point? So if you two stocks, stock A and stock B, you combine them in these two in a portfolio, then your portfolio risk is less than what is the combined risk of stock A and stock B. That's the main idea of diversification. Now look at this example. Suppose you invest 60% of your portfolio in J&J and 40% in Ford. The expected dollar return on J&J is 8% and Ford is 18.8%. So what's the expected return? So what we do according to formula, if you can remember, weight of asset 1, return of asset 1 plus weight of asset 2, return of asset 2. So 60% is the weight of asset 1 and 8% is the return of asset 1 and 40% is the weight of asset 2 and 18.8% is the return of asset 2. So if we multiply the corresponding weight and return and sum them up, we get an expected return of 12.3%. Now look at how do we calculate portfolio risk. Suppose you invest 60% of your portfolio in G&G, 40% in Ford once again, and the expected dollar return is 8% and 18.8%, right? Now you see that individualized standard deviation is 13.2% and 31%. That means there's asset 1 and asset 2 respectively, and correlation is 1. Okay, so calculate the portfolio variance. Now, this is how we calculate individual component. Okay, so this is pretty straightforward. Now, if we simply combine them in the equation that we have previously seen, if you remember, look, this is the weighted square of asset 1 and standard deviation of asset 1. Okay, weight to a square, that's 40%, and standard deviation of asset 2 square. Then 2 weight of asset 1, weight of asset 2, standard deviation asset 1, standard deviation of asset 2, and this is correlation. So you can see this is portfolio variance, and if we take a square root, it's 20.3%. So as I previously told you that since your correlation here is 1, it means that these two assets are perfectly positively correlated. So you do not get any benefit combining these two in a portfolio because the portfolio risk will be the same as the combined risk of these two. However, if you can combine two stocks in a portfolio where risk will be anything less than 1, you get a benefit, right? Now, look at this example where instead of correlation 1, your correlation is 0.019, so it's less than 1. So we do the same calculation here and look at the variance, 253, where it was previously 412. And look at standard deviation, which is 15.9, which previously was 20.3. So since the correlation is lower, which is 0.019, since the correlation is lower, you understand that your riskiness of the portfolio declines. So the most important concept as we learned here, that as we combine two stocks in a portfolio which are anything less than perfectly positively correlated, then portfolio risk will be less than the combined risk of individual assets in the portfolio. Okay, so we have few more examples here. For example, if your correlation coefficient is negative, now look at is your portfolio variance and standard deviation. It is further lower. Okay, so when correlation is less than 1, the portfolio risk declines, and if it is negative, the portfolio risk further declines. But keep it in mind that to get diversification benefit, the correlation between two asset returns need not to be negative. If the correlation is less than 1 but still positive, and we get diversification benefit. But if it is negative, we get more diversification benefit. So we have few more examples here. I would suggest that you manage some time to look at these examples so you will understand the concept more clearly. So thank you very much. That's all in this video about portfolio risk and return. In the next video, we will see the relationship between portfolio risk and beta. Thank you very much.